On nights when the mountains sleep beneath storms and the world feels lost in white silence, miracles sometimes walk on four legs. In the frozen valley of Frost Hollow, a lone officer waited for another quiet shift to pass. But fate had other plans. Through the blizzard came a shadow, a German shepherd staggering through the wind, as if carrying the last hope left in the world. And in her trembling jaw, she held a tiny bundle that would change everything. What drives a wounded dog to cross a storm for help? What secret burns behind the snow of this forgotten town? Before the story begins, tell me where you are watching from. Your city, your state, your country. I would love to know who is joining us as we step into the storm together. Winter had swallowed Frost Hollow whole. The town, tucked in a narrow valley of the northern Rockies, lay beneath a storm so heavy that the streets blurred into white ribbons, the rooftops vanished under drifting snow, and the wind screamed down the alleys like some old spirit forgotten by time. Frost Hollow was always cold in January, but tonight it felt as if the mountains themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. At the edge of town, the small police substation glowed faintly against the blizzard, a square of warm yellow in the endless dark. Inside sat Officer Logan Reed, the only officer on duty, a man in his mid-30s with a quiet, weathered strength worn into his features. Logan stood 6'1", lean and broad-shouldered, with sandy brown hair trimmed short and a faint stubble that always returned by afternoon. His gray eyes, somber and steady, carried a tiredness that didn't come from lack of sleep, but from years of trying to be dependable in a place that rarely looked up long enough to thank him. He wore his uniform shirt half unbuttoned, the winter jacket slung over the back of his chair. A stack of case files, petty thefts, lost hikers, and small-town disputes leaned precariously beside him. On the desk drawer nearest his right knee lay an old wedding ring, tucked away where he wouldn't see it unless he needed to. He had stopped wearing it 2 years ago, not because he stopped caring, but because the weight of memory slowed him down during emergencies. Outside, the storm battered the building again, rattling the door. Logan took another sip of coffee, which had long gone cold. The clock ticked, one more reminder that most of Frost Hollow was asleep, trusting him to stay awake for all of them. Then the door burst open. A violent gust of icy wind shot inside, whipping papers into the air. Logan sprang up, hand instinctively reaching toward the handle of his flashlight. In the doorway stood a shape, staggered a shape, barely holding itself upright. A German shepherd, female. Her coat, a striking blend of black and tan, was matted with ice and streaked with dried blood. She moved with a desperate limp, one paw dragging, her chest heaving in shallow breaths. She clutched something in her jaws, a crumpled red flannel shirt pressed tight between her teeth. Logan crossed the room in seconds, shutting the door behind her and sealing the storm out. As the wind died and warmth returned, the shepherd collapsed at his feet, legs sprawled weakly. Logan knelt immediately. "Easy, girl. You're safe now." His voice softened in a way that came naturally around animals, a tone he rarely used on people anymore. Her ears twitched at the gentleness. Logan noticed then. The bundle in her mouth wasn't just fabric. Something moved inside. A small, fragile twitch. With careful hands, Logan took the flannel and unfolded it on the table under the bright desk lamp. A tiny German shepherd pup, no more than a few weeks old, lay curled inside, stiff from cold, his short fur pale tan with a darker saddle forming faintly across his back. His body was cold as the night outside. Logan's chest clenched. "Come on, little one. Stay with me." Years ago, Frost Hollow's mayor had approved a small set of emergency veterinary tools to keep in the station during winter, mostly for lost pets or wildlife rescues. Among them was a miniature oxygen mask and a basic warming lamp. Logan switched the lamp on and positioned it over the unmoving pup. He felt for a pulse. Nothing. Logan didn't hesitate. He placed 2 fingers gently on the pup's tiny ribcage and began rhythmic compressions. After 10 seconds, he slipped the oxygen mask over the tiny muzzle and gave careful breaths. Behind him, the shepherd mother watched with an ache in her eyes, a mixture of fear, exhaustion, and something fiercely protective. Her tail thumped weakly against the floor once. Logan kept going. "Come on, Ember, come on," he murmured, though he didn't know yet that this would be the pup's name. The seconds stretched painfully, Then the pup jerked, a faint, raspy cough. Logan froze. The chest rose in a weak, uneven breath. Relief washed through him like warm water thawing frozen veins. "There you go," he whispered. "Stay with me." The shepherd mother let out a low, trembling whine. Her whole body sagged with relief, though her legs still trembled underneath her. Logan finally turned his attention to her wounds. That was when he saw it, a faded tattoo on the inside of her right ear, K947. His brows knit. He hurried to the computer terminal, typing in the digits. A file popped up, half marked in red, half grayed out. K9 Vega, reported deceased 2 years ago. Logan stared at the screen, the hairs on his neck rising. Vega had been part of the state's K9 program, a highly trained shepherd noted for intelligence, discipline, and calm under pressure. She had been declared dead after a training facility fire, no remains found. "But they marked you dead anyway," Logan whispered. Vega's eyes met his, deep brown, intelligent, tired, and full of an unspoken history. She did not growl, she did not flinch. She simply watched him with a kind of worn-out trust, as if she had been walking through 2 years of storms to find someone who might believe her. Logan moved back to her, inspecting her injuries. Old scars crossed her muzzle and legs, evidence of heavy training and at least one surgery. More recent cuts suggested running through brush or broken debris. Her ribs showed under her coat. She had traveled far, and it had cost her. He stroked her neck gently. "You're a Vega," he said quietly, "and you came back from the dead." Vega blinked once, slow and calm, as if accepting the introduction. Ember let out another tiny wheeze, softer this time, but alive. Logan wrapped the pup in a warm towel, cradling him close. The clock read 1:47 a.m. The storm still roared, snow piling against the station windows. Logan exhaled, long and steady, realizing the night had changed. A supposedly dead K9 had walked out of a blizzard carrying a half-frozen pup. He didn't understand how or why, but he knew instinctively. Someone had tried to silence both of them, and Vega had refused to let it happen. He looked at the mother dog again. Her ears perked slightly, waiting. Not panicked, not aggressive, just waiting. "All right, girl," he said. "Let's get you both to help." He grabbed his coat, secured Ember against his chest, and gave Vega a reassuring nod toward the door. She stood, unsteady but willing. When Logan opened the door, the storm rushed in again, biting and merciless. But this time, 3 lives pushed into the cold together. And for the first time in years, Logan felt the faintest flicker of something he hadn't felt since the day he stored his wedding ring away. Hope. The storm had grown harsher by the minute, swallowing Frost Hollow's narrow forest road in swirls of white that danced like powdered ghosts. Logan Reed kept both hands tight on the steering wheel, leaning forward to see through the windshield as sheets of snow hammered against the glass. In the passenger seat, wrapped in a thick emergency towel, lay the small German shepherd pup he had temporarily named Ember, breathing fragile, fluttery breaths, but alive. On the back seat, curled in the blanket Logan had thrown over her, was the mother, Vega, formerly K947, her dark ears occasionally twitching, her body trembling not from fear but exhaustion. Logan spoke aloud not to fill silence, but to reassure the dogs and himself. "Almost there, girl. Hang on." Frost Hollow Animal Clinic appeared out of the storm like a low, square lantern, its sign half buried in snow, its front windows glowing dimly against the night. Logan parked and rushed to the door, Ember cradled in one arm, then turned back and coaxed Vega gently out of the back seat. She followed him, head low, tail tucked not in fear but in pain, leaving faint drops of melted snow and streaks of blood on the walkway. Logan knocked once, and the door swung open almost immediately. Dr. Claire Monroe stood there, her breath fogging the air. Claire was in her early 40s, taller than most women in Frost Hollow, with a slender frame accustomed to long shifts and quick responses. Her chestnut hair was pulled into a messy knot, strands falling around sharp green eyes that always seemed to spot what others missed. She had a kind voice softened by years of treating frightened animals, yet tempered by an underlying steel, something earned during her time working with the state's K9 program. She wore thick winter boots, dark scrubs beneath a heavy coat, and a stethoscope swung loosely around her neck. She looked tired, but alert the moment she saw Logan. "You said you were bringing in a shepherd and a pup. What happened?" Logan carried Ember inside as Vega limped past him. Claire closed the door behind them, sealing out the wind. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and pine soap, the only light coming from overhead lamps and a heater humming in the corner. Logan placed Ember on the metal table. Claire's eyes widened when she saw the pup's size, then narrowed when she saw the mother. "She came into the station," Logan explained, breathless. Barely standing, she had the pup wrapped in a flannel. Claire stepped toward Vega, squinting. "What's your name, girl?" Vega lowered her head slightly as if recognizing the tone. Then Claire froze. She had seen something. She lifted Vega's right ear carefully, her fingers steady despite the sudden shock in her expression. The faded tattoo was unmistakable. K947. "No," she whispered. "That's impossible." Logan stepped closer. "You know her?" Claire swallowed hard, eyes never leaving the tattoo. K947, Vega. She was part of the state's advanced K9 unit. She was declared dead 2 years ago after the training center fire. "I saw the file," Logan said quietly. "She wasn't just listed as missing. She was listed as dead. Claire finally looked at him. "I was the one who signed the form." The words hung heavy in the room. She touched Vega's neck gently, her face a mix of disbelief and sorrow. "We never found her body," Claire murmured. "Some higher-up told us to finalize the paperwork because the program needed closure, said it was a formality." Vega pressed her nose into Claire's wrist, recognizing her scent. Something weary but warm flickered in Claire's eyes. "Hey, sweetheart, you remembered me, didn't you?" But there was no time to linger on grief or guilt. Ember let out a weak cough. Claire snapped into motion with a sharp inhale. "All right, let's focus." She examined the pup quickly, her hands experienced and precise. Ember's temperature was dangerously low. His heart rate was shallow, but something else caught her attention. "Logan, hold him steady." Logan steadied Ember with both hands, while Claire drew a tiny blood sample. She moved to a screen and loaded the slide under a fast analyzer. A minute later, the results flashed. Claire's face changed. "Someone gave him something," she said quietly. "What do you mean, something?" "A sedative, a specialized one. It's used for large animal transportation, zoos, research labs. Absolutely not something anyone should inject into a newborn pup." Logan looked down at Ember, anger quietly sparking in his chest. "Was it meant to harm him?" "The dose was too low to kill," Claire answered, "but enough to keep him barely conscious. Easy to control." She turned to Vega and continued examining her. "And she has surgical scars. Old ones. She's had a chip removed, probably by someone who knew what they were doing, and these calluses on her forelegs. Years of intense K9 training." Claire stepped back, exhaling slowly. "Logan, Vega didn't die in that fire. She escaped something, and she's been running ever since." Logan looked at Vega, who watched them with a quiet alertness, her breathing still shallow, but her eyes burning with purpose. "Wherever she came from," he said, "she risked everything to get the pup out." Claire nodded, her face tightening. "And whatever she was running from wasn't just the fire from 2 years ago. This is recent. Someone sedated Ember not long before she reached you." The storm continued battering the clinic windows, howling like an unseen thing trying to get in. Claire wrapped Vega's leg carefully and applied warm packs to help circulate her blood. Ember, now warmed and out of immediate danger, slept in a soft towel inside a small heated incubator. Vega watched him, the way a soldier watches the last piece of hope left to guard. Logan stood beside Claire as she wrote notes, her brows furrowing deeper by the second. "They weren't trying to kill Ember," she muttered. "They were trying to control him. And if Vega was sedated or experimented on the same way," Logan's jaw tightened. "Someone wants them back." Claire met his eyes. "You can't take them to the station. Too many questions, too much visibility. And if whoever is behind this is still in the area..." Logan didn't need convincing. "My cabin," he said. "It's secluded. No one goes up there unless invited. They'll be safe." She nodded. "Good. Keep them warm, hydrated, quiet. Vega's strong, stronger than any dog has a right to be after what she's been through. She'll recover faster with you. She trusts you." Logan glanced toward Vega, who looked back at him with exhausted gratitude. Somehow, in just the span of an hour, their lives had become tied together by storm and circumstance. Claire helped Logan carry Ember, incubator and all, to the truck. Vega followed, walking slowly but with a steady determination that told Logan something unmistakable. She was a survivor, and she would not stop protecting her pup. As Logan opened the passenger door, a blast of cold snow blew into the clinic doorway. Claire hugged her coat around her. "Logan!" He looked back. "Yeah? Whatever happened 2 years ago," she said, voice low. "It wasn't an accident. Vega didn't wander to you by chance. She chose you. Don't underestimate that." Logan nodded once. "I won't." Vega climbed into the truck, circling once before settling down near Ember's incubator. She rested her head against the plastic wall, watching the pup inside. Logan closed the door gently, started the engine, and pulled onto the frozen road. Claire watched them disappear into the storm, her breath misting as she whispered to the wind, "Take care of her, Logan. She's carried enough burdens for a lifetime." Inside the truck, Vega let out a soft, weary sigh. Ember stirred in his blanket. Logan drove toward the dark woods where his cabin waited. A shelter, a hiding place, a fragile hope. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, 3 steady breaths filled the quiet, as if promising that whatever was coming next, they would face it together. Morning in Frost Hollow arrived not with sunshine, but with a dull silver glow that pressed through the storm clouds. Snowdrifts piled against Logan Reed's cabin, like white shoulders leaning into its wooden walls. The storm from the night before had slowed, leaving a strange, breathless quiet over the forest. Inside, the cabin was warmer than it had been in months. The fireplace crackled steadily, heating the small living space filled with the earthy smell of pine smoke and the subtle hum of a space heater set near a blanket where Vega lay resting. Ember slept in a soft towel-lined basket beside her, occasionally twitching in the fitful way newborn pups do. Logan sat at the small kitchen table, a mug of reheated coffee at his elbow, his laptop open. The glow of the screen lit his face, drawing deep lines of worry across the corners of his eyes. He had tried to sleep, but every time his head hit the pillow, the same questions returned. How did Vega survive a fire everyone believed had killed her? How did she cross miles of wilderness with a sedated pup? And why now, after 2 years of silence, had she appeared on his doorstep carrying something that looked a lot like evidence? Vega lifted her head, ears twitching slightly at the quiet tapping of Logan's keyboard. She watched him without blinking, as if she understood that whatever he was doing mattered. Logan took a slow breath, scrolled through another corrupted file, and muttered, "Come on, something has to be here." Many digital case folders from the training facility fire were marked with red error messages. Data lost in incident. But Logan had grown up in Frost Hollow, and he knew its systems, its shortcuts, and its hidden quirks. The county server had a habit of leaving backup files in forgotten subdirectories, untidy, unintentional, but useful. After nearly half an hour of digging, he found a directory labeled Old Transfer Queue, Pending. Inside were fragments of reports, half-complete incident notes, and a name he didn't expect to see: Officer Ryan Hale, handler of Vega, K947. Logan leaned forward, pulse tightening. Vega's ear twitched sharply as if the name itself stirred something inside her. Logan clicked the file. Most of the report was damaged, lines of text broken by symbols and blacked-out squares, but one section survived. It was a final unsent note written by Hale: observed irregular delivery of unlisted compound to auxiliary storage, potential neuroenhancement substance, suspect Dr. Marcus Crowell bypassing oversight, request immediate audit of lower chemical repository. The next sentences were burned at the edges of the scanned image. The text melted into gray ash. Logan sat back slowly, letting the implications settle. Neuroenhancement, unauthorized chemicals. A hidden repository under the training grounds. A scientist, Crowell, who slipped out before any investigation truly began. It felt wrong then. It felt worse now. He looked at Vega. Her amber eyes were fixed on the computer screen, pupils tight, ears slightly raised. Something in that ruined report had reached her. "You remember him, don't you?" Logan asked softly. Vega didn't move, but the tightening of her jaw was answer enough. Logan printed what fragments he could, spreading the pages across the table. Among them were grainy photographs, dogs undergoing training, officers in protective gear, staff standing by metal cages. Vega appeared in several images, younger but unmistakable, strong, alert, disciplined. Next to her in one photo stood a man with dark hair, a kind expression, and a calm posture. His hand rested on her shoulder. The caption, blurry but still legible, read, "Hale and Vega, Precision Unit 12. Logan studied the handler's face. "So that's Ryan Hale," he murmured. "Your partner." Vega rose, walked to the table, and pressed her nose to the photograph. Her breath fogged the faded image. For a moment, Logan could almost sense her memory pulling forward, scents, sounds, moments shared with the person beside her. But something else happened. When Logan slid the stack of photos, revealing an image of the burned training annex, Vega stiffened. Her ears shot upward, her muscles tightened. A low, quiet rumble came from her throat. Not aggression, but recognition threaded with fear. Ember stirred in his basket. Logan knelt beside Vega, speaking gently. "It's okay. You're safe here. Whatever happened back then, it won't happen again." Vega's growl faded, replaced by a desperate alertness. She walked to the cabin door, sniffed the gap beneath it, then stared at Logan, tail straight, body tense. Logan frowned. "What is it?" Vega paced once, then pressed her nose to the door again and gave a soft but urgent whine. Logan grabbed his coat and stepped onto the porch. The cold hit him instantly, but something else struck harder. Fresh tire tracks cut through the new snow, tracks that hadn't been there when he arrived hours earlier. They led from the tree line toward the cabin, stopping just short of the porch steps, then reversed, backing into the woods. Someone had come here, someone close enough to see the cabin, close enough to watch. Logan's breath clouded in front of him, a tight knot forming in his chest. "Someone followed us." Vega stepped out beside him, sniffing the air. Her posture shifted into something more practiced, something belonging to a trained K9. Her stance widened, her head lowered, her attention laser sharp. She detected a scent he couldn't. Something, or someone, unwelcome. Logan closed the door behind them. The warmth returned, but his heart stayed cold. He sat again at the table, scanning the fragments. Hale, Vega, the fire, the disappearance, the chemicals, and now someone lurking around his property. "This isn't random," he whispered. "Someone doesn't want this case opened again." Vega settled near Ember, curling protectively around him. Logan pulled up another file, an archive staff roster. He scrolled until he found it. Dr. Marcus Crowell, behavioral research consultant. Last known address, redacted. Last known employer, private contractor. Last known activity, unknown. Logan clenched his jaw. Crowell had slipped into the shadows after the fire, but Vega, Ember, and the sedative Claire identified were proof the shadows hadn't let go of their work. He printed one photo of the old facility, a steel frame building half collapsed, surrounded by scorched pines. Vega's reaction earlier lingered in his mind. Trauma, memory, or instinct. Whatever it was, it connected her to the truth. Logan rubbed his temples, fatigue settling into his bones. He didn't like bringing trouble to his quiet cabin, but trouble had arrived whether he wanted it or not. And Vega, battered and exhausted, had dragged herself through a blizzard to bring him a sign, a warning, or maybe a plea. He gathered the documents, slid them into a folder, and set it beside the laptop. Tomorrow, he'd take them to the sheriff. Briggs wasn't perfect, but he was one of the few in Frost Hollow who hadn't yet traded his conscience for convenience. Outside, a crow landed on a snow-covered branch, shaking loose a cloud of frost. The forest stood still and watchful. Ember squeaked softly in his sleep. Vega lowered her head beside him, her body curled protectively. Logan watched them both, feeling something unfamiliar stir in his chest, responsibility mixed with a growing fear that whatever had happened 2 years ago had not ended. It had only gone quiet. Now, it was waking up. The cabin settled into silence. Logan took one last look at the tire tracks outside before closing the curtains. There were ghosts in the files, and now, ghosts in the woods. Whoever had come to the cabin wasn't done searching, and they would be back. The next morning came with a brittle cold that clung to the air like thin glass. Frost Hollow lay beneath another curtain of snow, and even the towering pines seemed to hold their breath. Logan Reed stood on the cabin porch, his boots half buried in the powder, staring once more at the tire tracks disappearing into the tree line. They were faint now. Night winds had softened the edges, but still visible enough to prove what he already knew. Someone had come looking, someone who didn't intend to stop. Inside, Vega rested near the fireplace, her breathing steadier, but her eyes sharp and alert. Ember slept curled against her belly, his tiny chest rising and falling in rhythmic pulses. Logan stepped back inside, brushing snow from his jacket. "I'm going to the sheriff," he said quietly. Vega raised her head. She didn't understand the words, but she felt the shift in his energy. More tension than the night before, more urgency. Logan gathered the folder of printed documents from the ruined case files, slid them into a waterproof bag, and checked his radio. Static. The blizzard still interfered with most signals. He grabbed his coat. "I'll be back soon. Lock the cabin down," he joked softly, though Vega merely blinked, unimpressed by human attempts at humor. She would guard Ember either way. The drive back to town was slow, the roads still thick with snowbanks. When Logan stepped into the sheriff's office, he brought cold air and a seriousness that made Sheriff Briggs look up immediately. Sheriff Daniel Briggs, a man in his early 50s with a heavy build and a salt and pepper beard, was the kind of lawman Frost Hollow relied on, practical, intuitive, and occasionally gruff. He wore a thick flannel shirt under his uniform vest, and his weary eyes scanned Logan the moment he walked in. "Morning, Reed," Briggs said. "You look like someone stole your truck." "Not my truck," Logan replied, dropping the folder onto the desk. "Something worse." Briggs raised a brow. He opened the folder and skimmed through the papers, charred edges, fragmented reports, the photo of Vega beside Ryan Hale. His expression shifted. "Where'd you get these?" "Buried in an old directory," Logan said. "Not deleted, just quietly misplaced." Briggs read the last surviving note from Hale, the reference to neuroenhancement compounds, unauthorized deliveries, and suspicions about Dr. Marcus Crowell. The sheriff exhaled a deep, slow breath. "This is serious, Logan." "I know." "This kind of allegation?" Briggs tapped the paper. "It would have blown up the entire K9 program." Logan nodded. Then he delivered the part he had been holding on to since dawn. "Someone came to my cabin last night, before dawn. I found fresh tire tracks." Briggs's jaw tightened. The humor drained from his face. "You think it's connected?" "Vega reacted before I even opened the door," Logan said. "She knew someone was there, someone familiar." Briggs leaned back in his chair, eyes on the ceiling as if replaying old memories. "Crowell," he muttered. "That man always walked like he didn't cast a shadow." "We need to look at the training annex," Logan said. "Officially." Briggs hesitated, only for a second, but Logan caught it. "The state already closed that case," Briggs answered. "Too much hassle to open old wounds, and some folks don't like when small-town sheriffs poke around where they're not wanted." Logan stared at him. "And what do you want?" Briggs rubbed his beard, staring out through the frosted window. He had the look of a man who still believed in the right thing, but also knew the cost of pursuing it. "I want the truth," Briggs finally said. "But I need something solid, something more than these scraps." Logan took a slow breath. "Claire ran lab tests on Ember. The sedative was the same type used in the old K9 trials. She'll testify." Briggs's eyes widened slightly. "She confirmed that?" "Yes." That was enough. Briggs stood up, squared his shoulders, and walked to the evidence room. When he came back, he carried a clipboard and a sealed envelope. "Fine," he said. "You have your warrant, limited access. We'll take a team and reopen the site for structural investigation of hazardous remains. Keeps bureaucrats calm." Logan allowed himself the first small relief since the storm began. "Thank you." Briggs fixed him with a hard stare. "But you're leading this because you stirred it. If something's waiting for us out there, you better be ready." Logan nodded, though the weight of it settled heavily. Within 2 hours, a small forensics team assembled at the sheriff's office. 2 techs, 1 deputy, and Briggs himself. Logan led them up the frosted highway toward the charred remains of the K9 training annex, a facility abandoned on the outskirts of the forest. The building emerged from behind a ridge, a dark skeleton perched in the white expanse. Its metal beams were twisted from the fire, and sheets of ice draped from its edges like frozen curtains. The wind moaned through the ruins, carrying fine snow like drifting ash. The forensics team fanned out, taking photos, setting markers, dusting blackened surfaces with gloved hands. Logan walked slowly through the remains. He could almost picture Vega here, training, running drills, standing beside Hale. He stopped where the concrete floor had once been smooth training ground. Now it was cracked, stained, uneven. Vega had reacted to photos of this place with attention he hadn't seen before. Something here held her memory in its teeth. One of the forensics techs called out, "Reed, you might want to see this." Logan followed him to the rear of the building. Snow had piled heavily against the wall, forming drifts that rose almost to Logan's waist. But beneath one drift, partially melted from an odd current of warm air trapped below, something metal gleamed, a square outline. Logan knelt, brushed snow away with thick gloves, and revealed a scorched steel panel recessed into the ground. A hatch. "This wasn't in the blueprints," Briggs said behind him. Logan found a heat-seared handle beneath a layer of ash. With Briggs's help, he forced the hatch open. A rush of cold, stale air rose from a ladder, descending into darkness. Logan flicked his flashlight on. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing concrete walls leading downward. "A sub-level," Briggs muttered. "Why wasn't this reported?" "Because someone didn't want it known," Logan said. The team descended. The staircase led them into a wide, bunker-like room. The temperature was colder than the surface, sharp enough to sting their breaths. Logan swept the flashlight across the space. Metal kennels lined the left wall, each big enough to hold a K9. Some were intact, others were bent, as if something had struggled violently inside. On the right stood steel shelves, many toppled, littered with shattered containers and blackened labels. Logan leaned closer to a half-burned tag. Neuro Enhancement Compound, Trial Batch. The air felt suddenly heavier. Further in, the light glinted off a small metallic object lying among the rubble. Logan crouched and picked it up carefully with gloved fingers. A dog tag, burned at the edges, but the engraving was still readable. Hale and Vega, partners. Briggs exhaled, voice low. "That poor girl." Logan slid the tag into an evidence bag. Near the far wall, a row of data safes stood half-melted but still closed. However, several hard drives and a sealed thermal container lay on the floor, seemingly knocked loose from higher shelves during the fire. The techs secured them immediately. "We have enough to push a full investigation," Briggs said, all mixed with anger. "This wasn't a training facility, it was a lab." Logan nodded slowly. Crowell didn't leave empty-handed, but he didn't erase everything either. He looked toward the hatch, feeling the enormity of what Vega had escaped from. She knew, she remembered, and she brought us right back here. The wind howled above, rattling the ruins. Logan felt, for the first time, the edge of something far bigger than Frost Hollow, or his quiet cabin life, something that had been buried under ash and lies. And now, with Vega back, that buried truth had claws. The discovery beneath the ashes spread through Frost Hollow's law enforcement circles faster than anyone expected. By sunset of the same day, quiet phone calls had been made, encrypted messages sent, and questions asked by people who normally preferred silence. But word did not travel only through the righteous. It traveled to the man who feared it most. Miles away, hidden in a private research compound buried deep within a snow-swept valley, Dr. Marcus Crowell stared at a blinking message on his encrypted tablet. His once pristine lab coat hung loosely on his shoulders. He had lost weight in recent months, living more off anxiety than food. His hair, thinning and prematurely gray, stuck out from long nights without sleep. He wore thick glasses that magnified his sharp, restless eyes that never fully trusted the shadows behind him. He was brilliant, but brilliance twisted under pressure often became desperation. And tonight, desperation gnawed at his ribs like a starving animal. They found the sublevel. They found the records. They found the tag. He stormed across the lab floor, boots clacking on polished concrete. Around him were rows of cages, empty now, workbenches lined with tools, screens displaying test data, and shelves containing carefully packaged vials of a pale blue mixture, the refined version of the neuro enhancement compound he had helped develop. Except helped wasn't the right word. He had perfected it. And Vega, K947, had been his crowning achievement before she escaped the fire that was supposed to erase all evidence of wrongdoing. "She survived," he muttered, pacing faster. "And she bred the next generation." He pressed shaking fingers against his temple. Ember wasn't just a pup. He was proof. Proof that the compound's long-term genetic effects worked. Proof someone would pay a fortune for. Crowell had already arranged meetings with private buyers, entities that didn't ask ethical questions. They wanted results, enhancements, obedience, but loose ends were unacceptable. A living subject wandering the wilderness, carrying a pup unregistered and unmonitored, was not a loose end. It was a spark waiting to become wildfire. He slammed his fist onto the table. "I need them back, both of them." He pulled up a map of Frost Hollow, zooming in on the edge of the woods. The cabin appeared as a tiny square. He had known where to look. He had followed Vega's approximate trail in the snow after she escaped, had tracked sightings, had even sent scouts to confirm her direction. Last night, one of those scouts had driven close enough to the cabin to verify something moving inside. Vega had been close, too close. But now, he didn't have time for stealth. He needed to eliminate evidence and reclaim his assets. He packed a tranquilizer rifle, sleek, black, top grade, then tucked a small metal crate under his arm. Inside was a soft lining meant for transporting delicate subjects, ember-sized subjects. A storm advisory flared on his tablet, wind increasing, whiteout conditions likely. "Good," he murmured. "Noise covers noise." He stepped out into the night, the sky swirling with snow that fell like ash, and beneath that sky, his dark SUV rolled silently toward the woods of Frost Hollow. At Logan Reed's cabin, the storm had not yet reached its peak, but the wind's voice grew sharper as night approached. Frosted flakes clung to the windows like icy fingerprints. Inside, the warm glow of the fire softened the wooden interior. Vega rested with her head on her paws, watching Ember, who lay curled beside her in a blanket-lined basket. Claire Monroe had stopped by earlier, bringing food and checking vital signs. Now she sat at the table with Logan, reviewing printed test results. She looked exhausted, but her mind was sharp. "His temperature stabilized," she said, nodding toward Ember. "But Logan, the compound in his system isn't something you just stumble onto. Whoever gave it to him had access to restricted supplies." "I know," Logan replied, "and those tire tracks weren't from a lost hunter." The room fell quiet. Outside, the wind tapped branches against the cabin walls like skeletal fingers. Claire folded her arms, gaze drifting to Vega. "She's been through something terrible, yet she went straight to you. Do you realize how remarkable that is?" Logan hesitated. "I think she went to anyone who would help her." "No," Claire said gently, "not anyone. Vega was trained to choose wisely. She would have avoided crowds, avoided danger, avoided anyone showing signs of threat. She walked through a blizzard because she trusted her instincts about you." Logan didn't respond, but something softened in his chest. Vega lifted her head, ears flicking at the low rumble of wind outside. The storm was intensifying. Claire checked her watch. "Roads are getting bad. I should leave before I get snowed in." "I'll walk you to your truck," Logan said, grabbing his jacket. Claire approached Vega and Ember one last time. Vega's tail thumped once, weak but genuine. Claire smiled. "Stay safe, girl, and keep that little one warm." Logan opened the door to a blast of icy air. The sky had gone dark, shaping the world in shades of swirling white. Claire bundled herself tightly and trudged toward her truck as Logan held a flashlight beam steady. When she climbed in and started the engine, Logan gave a final wave, then returned to the cabin. He had barely closed the door when Vega jerked upright, ears fully perked. Ember stirred in his basket, sensing his mother's tension. "What is it?" Logan whispered. Vega padded to the window, posture rigid. She released a low, warning growl, not fearful, but protective. Logan moved to the window, wiping condensation with his sleeve. At first he saw only the storm's thick veil, then a shape, large, moving through the trees with purpose. A vehicle, lights off, engine low. Logan's heartbeat quickened. "Stay here," he murmured to Vega. He grabbed his flashlight and service weapon, though he prayed he wouldn't need them. He cracked the door open, stepping into the storm's roar. Snowflakes stung his face. The flashlight cut through the white haze, revealing a dark SUV parked between the pines. A figure stepped out. Crowell. Logan recognized him from the lab reports. A thinner, more frayed version, but unmistakable. Eyes sharp with obsession. He held something in his hands, a tranquilizer rifle. "Reed!" Crowell called over the wind. "Step away from the cabin. This doesn't concern you." Logan steadied his stance. "You're trespassing, Crowell." Crowell laughed, the sound warped by the storm. "You have something of mine. 2 somethings, actually. Give them back, and no one gets hurt." Logan's grip tightened on his weapon. "They're not property." Crowell's smile twisted. "Everything is property to someone." His arm rose. A dart whistled through the air. Logan ducked instinctively as the tranquilizer dart slammed into the cabin wall behind him. Before he could raise his weapon, Vega exploded through the doorway. No hesitation, no fear, despite the storm, despite her weakened body. She barreled across the snow, a streak of black and tan fury. Crowell staggered, firing again. This time, the dart hit Vega's flank. She stumbled but kept going, fueled by something deeper than strength, an instinctive, primal need to protect her pup. Crowell cursed, trying to reload. Vega reached him, teeth bared, not to harm, but to block him from reaching the cabin. Logan sprinted after her, shouting, "Vega!" A second shot thudded into Vega's shoulder. Her legs faltered. She collapsed into the snow, breathing hard. Crowell lunged forward, grabbing a small metal crate from the SUV. Inside, Ember whimpered, having been snatched during the chaos. "No!" Logan shouted, racing across the ice. Crowell turned toward the river path, a trail slick with new snow leading to a frozen crossing where another vehicle waited. Wind shredded the night. Vega pushed herself up, trembling, refusing to stay down. Logan reached her, but she slipped from his grasp and dragged herself toward the river, eyes blazing with determination. Crowell stumbled onto the ice. Vega lunged to block him. The surface beneath them cracked. Ember slid across the ice, crate tumbling open. The tiny pup skittered toward the fracture. Logan threw himself forward, sliding low on his stomach to distribute his weight, reaching for Ember. Vega, half submerged in freezing water, pushed with her nose, guiding Ember closer through sheer will. Logan caught the pup just as the ice groaned beneath them. Behind him, Crowell scrambled back toward the shore to grab a weapon. Then, a distant wail. Sirens. Sheriff Briggs's voice crackled faintly through. The storm. More engines, more lights. Crowell froze. He was out of time. Deputies swarmed the riverbank as Crowell tried to flee, but Briggs cut him off, tackling him into the snow. The tranquilizer rifle skidded away. Logan crawled backward, cradling Ember. Vega shivered violently, but she stood between Logan and Crowell until the very last second. And finally, Crowell was in cuffs, shouting incoherent protests as deputies dragged him away. The storm eased just enough for Logan to see Vega collapse near him, chest heaving. He gathered Ember close, then wrapped his arm around Vega's shaking frame. "It's over," he whispered. "You did it, girl." But the night was far from over. Healing would take time. Yet for the first time since Vega walked out of the storm, danger had a face, and that face was no longer free. Winter did not surrender quickly in Frost Hollow. Even after Crowell's arrest, the valley remained trapped beneath layers of hard, glittering ice that refused to melt. Snowbanks still hugged the roadside, and wind still swept through the pines like a tired ghost reluctant to leave. But slowly, almost shyly, the world began to warm. Weeks passed, investigators from the state and federal agencies arrived, combing through the underground lab, the chemical stores, the evidence boxes, the hard drives pulled from the hidden vaults. Files were reconstructed, audio logs decoded, bank transfers examined. Each new fragment painted a clearer picture of Crowell's operation. How he had altered the program from within, how he had suppressed reports, how he had turned the K9 unit into something it was never meant to be. Crowell's name shifted from a footnote to a headline, from consultant to primary suspect. And Vega, once stamped as deceased and forgotten, became the living key to everything he had tried to bury. Logan visited the sheriff's office nearly every day, offering statements, retrieving updates, submitting what evidence he had collected. But each day after leaving the fluorescent-lit building, he drove to the Frost Hollow Animal Clinic, where Vega and Ember were undergoing observation. Inside the clinic, the lighting was warm and steady, filled with soft beeping machines and the faint scent of lavender disinfectant that Claire Monroe preferred. Ember had grown stronger by the week, his legs steadier, his eyes brighter, his playful spirit emerging like a spark finally free from the cold. Vega, though older, healed with the stubborn resilience of a creature who had survived far worse. Claire had run neurological tests, reaction tests, pain tolerance evaluations, and behavioral assessments. Each time, Vega responded with instinctive loyalty but gentle restraint, proof that whatever enhancement Crowell had intended to manipulate, it had not corrupted who she was at her core. On one particularly quiet afternoon, Claire stood beside Logan as Vega trotted slowly down the hallway, carefully navigating plastic cones set up for a reflex test. "She's remarkable," Claire said softly. "She's a fighter," Logan answered. "A fighter with discipline," Claire corrected. "A dog who chooses empathy over aggression, even after trauma." She paused. "That tells me the compound didn't take away her true nature. It only tried to twist it." Vega reached the end of the hallway and looked back at them with expectant eyes. Claire smiled and knelt to reward her with a gentle scratch behind her ear. Logan watched them, a warm tightness forming inside his chest, something that felt like gratitude, relief, and the lingering adrenaline of the last few weeks finally easing. "Logan," Claire said, rising to her full height, "there's something you should know." He met her gaze. "The state is officially retiring Vega from the program," she said. "With full honors. Her record is restored." Logan blinked. "She deserves that." "And," Claire continued, "they're allowing her to be adopted by a handler of good standing." She handed him a stack of papers, neatly clipped, official seals in the corner. "I recommended you?" Logan looked down at the forms. Words swam before settling into clarity. "Application for ownership. Veterinary behavioral clearance. Permanent transfer of care." He read them slowly. Then he turned to Vega. She sat patiently beside Ember's basket, ears perked, breathing calm, as if she already knew. Logan signed. The ceremony took place in the small briefing room of the Frost Hollow Sheriff's Office. The walls were lined with old photographs, rescued hikers, retired deputies, community fairs, and a handful of fallen officers memorialized by brass plaques. A modest gathering filled the room. Briggs in his formal uniform, 2 deputies, Claire in a clean white coat, and a few townspeople who had heard whispers of the story. Vega sat beside Logan, wearing the old K9 harness Briggs had polished himself. Ember, still tiny but confident, rested underneath her seat, head on his paws. Briggs cleared his throat, unfolding a paper. "K9 Vega," he read, voice steady, "previously listed as deceased, is hereby recognized for exceptional bravery. Her survival, her protective actions, and her role in exposing criminal wrongdoing have contributed to saving numerous lives." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "From this day forward, she is officially retired with honors." Claire stepped forward and handed Logan 2 badges mounted on a wooden plaque. One, tarnished with soot, was the recovered badge of Ryan Hale, returned after the investigation. The other was new, etched cleanly with "Vega, retired, forever home." Logan felt a tightness in his throat. Vega looked up at him, tail slowly thumping against the floor, sensing the emotion even if she didn't understand the ceremony. Briggs cleared his throat again. "Reed, you're her handler now. Take good care of her." Logan nodded. "I will." Then, with far more emotion than expected, Briggs added, "She earned her peace. You make sure she gets it." Spring arrived all at once, as if the world had been waiting for the right moment to breathe again. Snow peeled away from rooftops, dripping in steady rhythms. Rivers thawed and began to sing. Roads cleared. Pines shimmered with fresh life. At Logan's cabin, sunlight warmed the wooden porch. The forest, once silent and ominous, filled with birds returning to their branches. Vega lay stretched across the porch steps, her coat gleaming under the afternoon sun. Ember bounded in circles around her, tossing a ball of moss he had found among the trees. Every time he tripped over his own paws, Vega nudged him upright with gentle patience. A small figure jogged across the yard. Ellie, the 8-year-old girl from the neighboring house. She carried a battered blue ball under one arm, her dark brown hair tied in two messy braids, cheeks flushed from running. Ellie had lost her father in a wildfire 2 summers earlier, and though she rarely spoke about it, she gravitated naturally toward the quiet of Logan's porch and the companionship of 2 dogs who seemed to understand unspoken sorrow. "Can Ember play now?" she asked between breaths. Logan opened the screen door, stepping out with 2 mugs, one coffee, one hot cocoa. "If Vega says yes." Vega stood, shook out her coat, and bumped Ember toward Ellie with her nose. Ellie grinned and tossed the ball. Ember dashed after it, paws skidding on the wood, tail wagging like a tiny flag. Vega followed more slowly, content to supervise. Claire arrived moments later, carrying a tray of small flowering plants. "Your porch needs color," she declared, setting the tray down. Logan chuckled. "I'm better at keeping dogs alive than plants." "That's why I'm here," she replied. Together, they arranged the flowers along the steps as Ellie and Ember played. Vega settled behind them, watching everything with calm satisfaction. After they finished planting, Claire stepped into the cabin to wash her hands. Logan followed, glancing at the sunlight pooling across the floorboards. His eyes drifted to the wooden shelf he had built weeks ago. 2 badges rested there side by side, the old one belonging to Ryan Hale and the new one honoring Vega's retirement. Beside them, a small carved plaque read, "Ember, Hope in Training." Logan felt the quiet peace of the moment, the warmth of the fire, the distant laughter of a child, the rhythmic scratch of Vega's tail on the porch. 2 months ago, Vega had walked into his station half frozen, carrying a dying pup and 2 years of nightmares. Now she lay in the sun, healing. Ember, once barely breathing, now raced through the yard, chasing birds, leaves, and childhood joy. Logan closed his eyes for a brief moment, letting the stillness settle around him. "She found her way home," he said under his breath. "And so did we." Outside, Vega lifted her head at the sound of his voice. Ember curled against her. The sun warmed their coats. The breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh earth. No thunder. No miracles announced with noise, just breath and warmth and new beginnings. Sometimes the world didn't need to shout to show its grace. Sometimes it simply brought the lost back home. Sometimes God's miracles do not arrive with thunder or shining signs. Sometimes they come quietly through a loyal dog who refuses to give up, through an officer who listens to the whisper of courage in his heart, or through moments of protection we never expected. Vega and Ember remind us that even in the coldest winters of our lives, God is still working in the shadows, guiding us home one small step at a time. In our everyday lives, we all face storms we do not talk about, worries, fears, days when hope feels thin, but God walks beside us whether we see Him or not. He sends help through people He places on our path, through acts of kindness, through strength we did not know we had. If we choose faith, we create space for His quiet miracles. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs comfort today. Leave a comment to let us know your thoughts, and remember to subscribe for more stories of hope, courage, and love. May God bless you and your family with peace, protection, and warm light wherever you are. And if you believe in the gentle miracles He sends, type Amen in the comments.